Greetings, one and all. This is Dr. Jonathan Ellerby, looking a little fancier than normal. I got to adjust my camera here a little bit. Looks like the screen's a little smaller than normal. Yeah, I'm dressed up. If you've been watching a lot of these live 12 at 12s, you know that sometimes I got wet hair or messy hair, or it looks like it just came in from, I don't know, picking weeds or flip screens from doing work, and sometimes that's true. But today, as I record this, it's April the 12th. It's Easter 2020. And what an extraordinary Easter this is and has been for all of us, regardless of our religion or culture or background. I serve as the spiritual director at the Althea Center in Denver. And every year we have an extraordinary Easter service that is eclectic and inclusive, and we talk about Christ from a kind of a cosmic consciousness sort of perspective, and it's a very special gathering for us. And so for the 300 plus people that normally get together, today was really something different to miss. However, we did it online, and that's on the Althea Center Denver page, and it was pretty cool. We managed to figure out how to split screen with Wendy Harston from the Queen City Jazz Band, so that's pretty cool to check out. But what I wanted to do today in our 12 at 12 is talk about, in a nutshell, one of the core messages in that service. I gotta just look for my watch and make sure I'm on track here. So my basic idea, and we're just going to dive right in, no meditating, no reading, I don't think. But the basic message is that you might consider, regardless of whether you're spiritual or religious, Christian or not, that there is something truly universal, extraordinary, and essential in the story and teachings of Jesus for this moment in time. Now, a couple things you have to get rid of before you kind of hear where I'm going. First of all, too often people make religion and spirituality a human game, right? Are the teachings true? Did people write it down correctly? Did that really happen? Was Jesus human or divine? Who was really there? Are Christians right or wrong? That's fine. You can engage the world at that level. But for me, it's kind of the shallow end of the pool, if you don't mind me saying. Now, if you remember our 3 channels, those of you that watch a lot of these, we talk about hang on, I got it right here. We talk about the conditional self, the essential self, and the universal self. Well, the conditional self is the one that's simply comfortable believing whatever you were conditioned to believe. So Christianity is the only way, or my church is the only way, or whatever. Or for that matter, religion is not the way. Religion is bad. That's a conditional kind of reaction. To dig into questioning spirituality and religion is a very essential kind of attitude or mindset, and it's a part of the spiritual journey, but we can get stuck there in this kind of human debate, this world of human logic. But when we move our consciousness into the universal channel, what we recognize from that deep, deep heart center of self is that ultimately all of the dramas and debates and politics and differences exist within a greater container, the container of consciousness, of energy, of existence itself. And so that container, that consciousness is acting upon us in all moments. So when I look back at the story of Christ, I don't just think about what he did and said, what was recorded about what he did and said, but also what were the events beyond his control, and how do all those forces and factors come together into a story that we can now feel and look back and understand today. One of the interesting universal, interpretations of the life of Jesus was that it was prophetic. That what he taught wasn't just for that time, and it wasn't just for those people. You have to remember, at the time when he was teaching and living, he was still a Jewish person, right? He was still coming out of a tribal consciousness amid the blossoming of the Roman Empire, which signified the blossoming of civilization. So here we have a moment where the Roman Empire was literally taking over the planet with a vertical consciousness, right? This was the time starting around 500 BC where vertical consciousness was showing up everywhere, in religion, in society, hierarchies. The idea that religion was about me and something greater, me and God, me and nirvana, but not me and the plants and animals, not me and my neighbors. So there was a transition from a very feminine, earth-based consciousness, feminine meaning inclusive, relating to that which is in your life, willingness to embrace mystery and so on, right? Power of ceremony, community, to something that was much more self-focused, right? The power of the individual to manage other individuals, the manipulation of power, the blossoming of commerce, agriculture, and so on. So you have these two forces quite literally in tension and pulling apart as Jesus comes into the world. And he in his own self is actually the embodiment of the conscious positive integration of these forces. In other words, his life's teachings and message are embodying the old world, his old world. It's feminine, right? It's sitting on hilltops telling stories under trees. It's traveling with small groups of people that you build intimate relationships with. It's making ceremony and ritual with bread and wine and the common tools of life. Jesus is very much like a tribal shamanic Jew as he awakens to his mystic reality, much, much more than he was a priest of a church, which frankly wasn't even a concept in his mind, didn't even exist, frankly, in the world for probably at least 70, 100, some think even longer after years after he died. So here he comes in with this tribal, magical, feminine upbringing and conditioning, this kind of feminine, magical, tribal way of being, right? Everything he does is in nature. His greatest moments of awakening, days in the desert, the whole deal's happening in nature, okay? So there's no Jesus in the cathedral. There's no Jesus in the church. There's no great stories of Jesus in the synagogue for hours upon hours, although it appears he respected where he came from. And yet, with that context in his life and demonstrated behavior, he is also awakening us to the power of the vertical ascension. That the human spirit is in fact something more than human. That the human spirit, in fact, is a spirit temporarily human. That we are children of God, that we are expressions of the divine. And that the great gift of life is to awaken to that fact. That belief in the material world as most important is a kind of poison. So he overturns the money in the temples. That acquiescing to power and control is a kind of poison of society. And so he lives on the fringe and he submits willingly to the punishment of the dominant culture, not only as a way to say he won't play their game, but as the ultimate way to prove that he has integrated realities, living and dead, masculine and feminine, tribal and so-called civilized, okay, vertical and horizontal. So what we discover is that this prophetic feeling people have about the Christ story is in fact, in my sense, absolutely and totally true. He was absolutely ahead of his time, and everything that he taught and attempted to teach and embody was much more a reflection of what I would call or what I would call much more a reflection of the perennial philosophy and the non-dual truth of awakening than it was of Christianity or any other modern convention. He was showing us that by being rooted at the center of the two worlds of human consciousness, the ascendant and the immersed, right? The transcendent and the integrated, that there we can find true living magic, the awakening of self as expression of spirit. And so this convergence of these two worlds in the symbolism is actually literally the cross. The cross is not just a symbol that we can transcend suffering, which metaphysically, metaphorically, and mystically it absolutely is. I don't believe for a second, with all due respect, it's not a sign that Christ died for our sins, in my experience. That may be yours, it's not mine. It's a sign that Christ wanted to show us beyond absolute certainty, with no doubt, that what we are transcends physical existence. And he even said, in John 16, he even said, I'm here now and I'm leaving, but I'll be back. And anyone who tries to control your thoughts and doesn't believe you when you say, I am one with God, and that the true nature of human spirit and spirituality transcends religion, culture, and context, they will try to kill you. It actually says that. He actually warns us 2,000 years ago of people who are righteously religious and who oppose the philosophy of oneness, the inclusion of all people in a spirit of love. He warns people that it will be misunderstood, but you must keep going. And he says, I will prove it to you. So to conclude our time, because we're coming to the end already, we must take hold of this story and the way it prepared us for today. This convergence of worlds, this convergence of these realities embodied by the cross and revealed through the suffering that tells us that when we let go of everything, we discover our true nature, a transcendent, radiant being that goes beyond human experience. Don't forget the other critical symbol that he left us with on that cross, which was the terrible crown, la corona. So here we are facing literally a pandemic, a worldwide crisis, not only of health, but economy and consciousness, and it's actually called la corona, the crown. The coronavirus, in a metaphorical way, is what Christ wore in that day. The terrible crown. I mean, even the virus looks like a spiky, ugly crown. And the connection that you must see is that Christ's legacy was to say that there will come a day in your life, your family's life, your culture's life, your global society's life, where a terrible crown will be put upon you. And you accept it, because the suffering and the mocking of hierarchy and power, the pain, and even the perceived shamefulness of it, the struggle of it, will actually set you free. It will open you to the truth of who you are. In this time of the terrible crown, the only way forward is through the mystical cross, the mythical cross, the metaphysical cross, and the sacred terrible crown that goes with it. We are in a time to bring together worlds, where it is not about power over, it's about power with. It can no longer be about one country versus another, billionaires versus those in poverty, privilege to go with race and religion. No. The message from 2,000 years ago is that in the time of La Corona, the time of the crown, the time of the coronavirus, we must take the cross and have faith that in the ultimate letting go of all we are, all we have, all roles, all conditioning, all striving, all trying to have influence and power, that in the absence of all that, there is a stillness and a peace that is alive and wise, and it will give you everything you need. And it's not in religion, and it's not in a master or a teacher. It is in existence itself. That is the gift of Easter for the whole world in 2020. That is the realization of the images from over 2,000 years ago, passed on and interpreted in thousands of ways. But through the clear mystical mind, we can all see the invitation that nothing that lasts can be taken from us. Nothing that is ultimately real or important can get sick or broken or die. If you are in a quarantine, consider this. Consider this. This terrible crown, this corona, is our wake up. And the pain of it, the struggle of it, the loss, is our invitation to go beyond, to embrace the stillness, the silence, and to become aware that God is something more than we can name, more than we can own or control, that the true nature of spirit is everywhere and for everyone. And its love and wisdom is always present. There's a lot more to say. If you want to hear more about it, you can check out the Althea Center Denver recording of the Easter service. Otherwise, I guess you can listen to this again. Stay tuned. This week we have some amazing things coming up on Jonathan Ellerby, PhD Facebook. I'll be offering a special new course, an audio package, and a book. What else? We're going to be doing some cool things on the Althea page as well. So just stay connected. Keep visiting Facebook. Keep visiting my website. And we're going to do some amazing things together. I love you. Thank you for your time. And don't forget, this is your moment. I'll see you soon.